Today, we're going to be going over some use cases for IRS, or Initial Rotation System. For those who don't know, if you hold a rotate button while a piece is spawning, it will already be rotated when it appears, even if it wouldn't be possible to rotate it at its starting location. For example, at 20G, the line piece spawns at the bottom of the playfield. Because the line piece moves its bottommost square down 2 tiles when rotating, and because TGM does not have floor kicks, it will not rotate after being dropped onto a perfectly flat stack at 20G. Depending on the layout of your stack, this may leave you completely unable to move the line piece into the well. However, if we use IRS, the line piece will already be in its vertical orientation when it spawns onto the playfield. I cannot overstate how important this maneuver is. There are Tetrises we can score by doing this that we simply would not get otherwise. And of course, we want all of the Tetrises that we can get. Consider the left side well. On paper, we'd prefer to always have a right side well, but life is not lived on paper. Misdrops happen, delayed skims go awry, and sometimes we just make mistakes. You can get a good grade with a lot of mistakes as long as you know how to navigate these difficult playfields. When using IRS, the conditions needed for the line piece to make it over to the left side well at 20G are changed. Rather than needing the second and third columns to be at least 2 blocks lower than the fourth column, we simply need there to be no increases in elevation going from the 6th column to the 1st column. That can either mean a flat stack, but it can also mean a steady slope downward. Or it can mean some mixture of the two. Just remember that there can be no increases in elevation from one column to the next, going from the center leftward. The line piece is only 1 block wide when oriented vertically, so there is no lenience there. It will get stuck on any upward slope at all. By the way, this is all true for using IRS to get the line piece into the right side well, too. This should be required less often because of the right side bias in TGM's rotation system, but it's good to know. Occasionally, you will want to bypass the need for the 9th column to be 2 blocks lower than the 7th column by making a downward slope from the 6th column rightward. The line piece is the flashiest benefactor of IRS, but the other pieces can make use of IRS in ways that are just as important to maintaining the health of the stack. The J and L pieces have awkward default spawn positions, hook side down. In order to be able to move the J piece to either side at 20G without IRS, the highest point of your stack must be the 6th column. For the L piece, it must be the 4th column. If the 5th column is the highest, then both pieces would be restricted to movement in only one direction because of the hook shape of their undersides. However, with IRS, an interesting quirk reveals itself. When you rotate the J piece clockwise with IRS, its base moves from 1 block, which spawns on the 6th column, to 2 blocks, which spawn on the 4th and 5th columns. When you rotate the L piece counterclockwise with IRS, its base moves from 1 block, which spawns on the 4th column, to 2 blocks, which spawn on the 5th and 6th columns. With sufficient awareness, you can choose whether or not to IRS your J and L pieces based on what the highest point of your stack is. If it is the 4th column, then you should allow the L piece to spawn in its default position, but IRS the J piece. If the 6th column is highest, then you should allow the J piece to spawn in its default position, but IRS the L piece. If the 5th column is highest, both the L and the J piece will need to be IRS'd in order to have the freedom to move to either direction. Unfortunately, there's no 180-degree rotation button in TGM, so the T piece is stuck with its singular option of spawning with a 1 block base on the 5th column. Horrifying. As for the S and Z pieces, they spawn with 2 block wide bases, and rotating doesn't unlock a new column on which they could land like it does for L and J. They just shrink into 1 block wide bases. Hearing all this, you might think IRS is useless for the pointy pieces. However, there is a place where IRS is still useful for them, and that's at the top of the playfield. The game ends when a piece spawns and some part of it overlaps with an existing part of the stack. Boom, in this position I just die. However, it only does this check after checking for IRS. Because of this, you can do IRS to dodge the parts of your stack that your next piece would otherwise overlap with, and maybe live to clear another line. I'm going to use Shiromino's board editor to show off all of the ways each piece can use IRS to avoid topping out. The brackets indicate squares where the piece could overlap with the stack, but would be avoided with IRS, while the colored-in squares indicate the position of the piece after IRS. I'll be posting all of these as a set of images in a link in the description in case anyone would like to reference these without needing to come back to this video. With that, I'd like to end this video by showing off some real examples of these techniques from some of my personal best games to hopefully give you a better sense of their use cases. We can bypass the typical accommodation requirements to rotate the line piece into the well so long as there is a downward slope leading from the 6th column to the well. We can use IRS to improve the flexibility of the J and L pieces, increasing the columns that would allow them to move to either side of the playfield from 1 to 3 with proper foresight. And we can steal time from the Grim Reaper by using IRS to avoid overlaps that would otherwise end our game. I hope this video was informative and helpful. Have a nice day.